now tuned in to the Lineman Lounge, the world's thickest sports podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Evo.
Come on, it's on, bitches. This is the Lineman Lounge. I am Mike. That is Evo. I'm super wavy on my camera. The settings get all messed up, so if it looks crazy, that's on purpose. You did not smoke too much weed. This is the Lineman Lounge, and we are talking linebackers today. We got a bunch of dudes we want to talk about prospect-wise. We got some big names, free agent-wise, possible locations they're going to go. But my man, Evo, how you doing, brother? It's that time of year. Diving back into these prospects. I know you love this time of year. You are a big-time draft guy. Everyone go check out Mock Draft 1.0 of Evo's over on the No Sleeves Network. But my guy, how you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm tired. It seems like every day at work just gets longer because we keep having less and less people there. But it's good. That it's just difficult, when we do get in this time of year, because you do want to, if you're a depraved individual like myself, you want to spend a lot of time looking at these prospects. And I took, a decent hack at it this weekend and started, getting a lot of notes down and things like that. Obviously going over the linebackers today. So I got some decently length write-ups for those guys, but it's tough to devote all the time and still have a social and family life. I mean, as of right now, I'm not positive, but as of right now, I'm going to be traveling for work one of these weeks here very shortly. So it's like so much going on, so busy. I'm extremely tired, but I'm happy to be here, happy to be going over this off-season stuff because, look, it is a whole different season. It's a different side of football. That's a lot of fun. It's the part of football for us Madden fans who played a lot of Madden football or still play it, enjoy, rebuilding our teams and making cool things happen. So excited to be here, excited to start this off. It's always fun doing this journey, the off-season journey on the show.
Fuck Madden. I'd much rather play NCAA football or college football at this point. That's not called NCAA anymore. But I understand your point because we're going to talk some of the guys that are free agents as well. Because while this is a pretty decent little linebacker class, there's some fairly big names that are going to be available in the free agent market as well. Guys coming back from injury, kind of some big names that we want to address. Maybe find some homes, and these guys won't be on the board for one of these teams that goes out and signs maybe like a veteran Bobby Wagner, or you get a Bobby Wagner and you bring in one of these guys to learn from one of the best that's ever played in the NFL at that spot. So we got quite a few names to talk about, man. Any news outside of these linebackers that we want to get into? Any big, exciting NFL news? I got one little thing that I wanted to bring up. I know that we've talked about the cap being a myth a lot. Well, it becomes even easier because the cap is going up a shitload, like $22 million or $22.5 million, something like that. The cap is going to go up for next year. So teams that were in kind of a little bit of a salary cap hell, or maybe had to work some extra deals, some struggles, not in such dire straits now. My Cleveland Browns included. What do you make of this big increase into the salary cap going into 2025?
Yeah, we knew that the salary cap was going to increase. I think most places kind of show you what the low end might end up looking like. But today, the NFL did actually announce it's going to be going up from $255.4 million last year, which was a monumental increase, up to 277.5 to 281.5. So there's $4 million swing area in there for this next upcoming season. For this offseason, the new league year is going to start here really quick. Pretty huge jump, and it's easy to project kind of that low end, but still, this is a monumental increase. I think it's been over 55 million the past 2 years that it's gone up. And if you think about it that way, the average starting like top 10-ish quarterback makes around 50 to 55 million a year annually. So just in the cap increases over the last 2 years, you're able to now pay for one of those quarterbacks. If that's how it worked, but it isn't, because players and agents and everything, they look differently. They look to, hey, get their guy the next biggest contract. They look at percentage of how much that cap space is going to be taken up for a team. Quarterbacks, they try to keep them around the 12.5 to 15% range of taking up cap space on a team. Those are getting bloated still. It's just going to mean that some of the contracts that happen at those premier positions are definitely going to be going up considerably. But I mean, that's nothing new. It's something we see every year. It's just with these big jumps, where is that ceiling going to be? When is it going to start to peter off again?
That TV money is coming for a long, long time, 10-year deal.
Yeah, well, when you have streaming services, I consider YouTube TV to still be a streaming service, but they're added in because the direct TV money went away and that went into streaming service money. But then on top of that, you do have the games that made it onto Netflix. You obviously have Amazon Prime for the Thursday games. Streaming is obviously the new way to watch TV. That's the main way that Americans take in their TV. So it's only natural to bring sports onto that. And those contracts, they keep getting bloated more and more each year. I don't think people like it was different with cable TV. Like you kind of had a set rate, like you're paying this much per month for that TV. Streaming services, it's tough to keep track of. You got Hulu and Netflix and Amazon, all these different things, and they all just kind of be like, this year we're going up by another $5 or another $10 or something like that, and they just kind of slip it by you. Before you know it, when your TV bill might have gone up like $5-10 a year, now you're getting it that much per service. You're paying an extra $80 per year for each of your streaming services. And that is going somewhere. And it's not just in the pockets of the owners of those streaming services. But when you have big groups like the NFL with the biggest sport in the US, essentially, they're getting a big hunk of it too. And that ends up going into things like the cap, like we're seeing here. So it's pretty impressive. And we'll see.
Made up 186. Sports made up 186 out of the 200 largest broadcasts for the year 2024. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's tons and tons and tons of money. And those deals just got bigger and bigger.
Yeah. It's not going away. It'll keep getting bigger. And look, it provides some of that relief for teams who are in struggle bus situations, like your Browns, like the Saints. It doesn't fix things for sure. Like there's still a lot of work to be done. And teams can only project this out so far. You can only kind of look a season ahead to kind of get an idea of what sort of cap relief you might be getting. Because at some point in time, they are going to start to hit more of a ceiling where things have to even out a little bit. But for a year like this year, it's a good thing for teams that do need that cap help. So congratulations to your Browns and the other teams around the league that needed that little bit extra.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know that I agree with you in the fact that it's going to level out at some point. There is no reason why it should.
It's not going to level. I'm just like, it's not going to be exponential like it has been.
I don't know, man, because you got to think that this deal is the next, 8 more years they're on this thing, and they're moving at this rate. You don't imagine that with this type of deal that ratings are necessarily going to go down. Now, obviously, a lot of things can happen, especially in the political landscape. Ratings could drop, but the NFL has never been more popular, and the money has never been greater. There's just the NFL is a money printing fucking factory. I think it is the largest money making apparatus in the entire United States. So I can't imagine there's going to be a point where it's like, oh, well, it can't just keep going. We're going to this money, these deals, because it sells so much, 186 out of the last 200 of the top 200 telecasts were sports related. And most of those being the NFL. Everybody loves money. Everybody wants to make money, and the NFL fucking prints it for you. So they're just going to, those numbers are just going to keep going up, I think, which is great. But the contract numbers are going to start touching those NBA, MLB, level numbers at some point here in the next 10 years, I think.
I mean, you're gonna feel really foolish when no one has time to watch TV because we're fighting the Gorloks, the alien race that comes up from under the ocean, and Atlantis has resurfaced and all that. No one's got time for TV because the satellites are knocked out, and we're fighting hand-to-hand combat with some sort of a new species out there. You're gonna feel really silly. Like,
Listen, if we're gonna live in the golden age, you got to fight for it.
yeah, I guess. But that was cool. That was release day, salary cap stuff. I don't really have a whole lot more as far as like football news. Obviously, we're still kind of seeing what's shaking out with the Saints hiring their new head coach and who they're going to be bringing in as coordinators and whatnot. One other cool sports thing that I'm into, being a Minnesotan a little bit, I got to watch the last game. NHL kind of did away with their All-Star week, and they're having the four country showdown going on. And if you didn't get to see US versus Canada last week, you missed out. It was great. They booed the national anthem up in Canada, and immediately we have 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. A lot of ass whooping.
Good.
Fights are still fantastic, obviously, in hockey, and it was everything I think that people want from like an all-star weekend as far as the pure sport actually being performed, because none of those guys took a rep off. They were showing out for their country. It felt like more than the Olympics, probably because it's such a small sample and they know you got to get it while you can. It was outstanding hockey, super fun to watch. US is now in the championship along with Canada, except for this time we'll be playing in the US for this one. That matchup is happening tomorrow night, Thursday, the 20th of February. So if you are a passive hockey fan, even, you're not rooting for, like, oh, my Minnesota Wild are playing, or, the Blues are playing, or something like that. You can root for your country, which is always something that feels good by tuning in and watching that hockey match. So hopefully it'll be electric, just like the one that happened last week.
I imagine it will be. I would love to throw out a challenge to the American fans who will be in attendance, because what I believe is going to happen, what's almost certainly going to happen, is the U.S. fans are going to boo the Canadian national anthem when it is played.
Throw bottles of maple syrup on the ice.
I mean, you could do a lot of things. You know what I would love to see? Nothing. Just don't make a fucking sound. Completely just ignore Canada. I mean, you really want to get under their skin right now with the shit that's been coming out of people's mouths? Act like they're fucking unimportant.
That will work as long as there aren't Canadians in the stands, because they'll still make noise.
Very true.
That, like, if you want to have a moment of silence, essentially, all the American fans should not only be silent, but they should turn away from the ice. So when they scan the fans, it's just a lot of people facing away, which is a disrespectful move. I mean, if you could somehow crowdsource the fact that everyone's got shirts on that says 51st state on the back while they do that, fantastic move. That's not going to happen, but no, it would be hilarious.
It would be hilarious. But here's the thing. You know what? I got no problem with them booing. If you want to be disrespectful, okay, because we beat their ass. And you know what? If you're going to do that, you have to deal with the consequences of those actions. And I'm totally good with it.
It was fisticuffs, and we got the better part of that. The ass whooping on the scoreboard, it was 2-1. The game ended at 3-1, but that was an open net goal at the end. So, those kind of don't count, but still, from the outside looking in, you might be like, oh yeah, whoop that ass. But I would love to see another 3-1 score, but have it just be the real deal. Either way, a lot of fun. Get your patriotism in.
Yes.
Hopefully you all are rooting for the US. And it's, look, there's not a ton of great sports going on in this moment. So football's done. You got some basketball. Who cares?
Regular season basketball.
Yeah. Baseball is coming up. It's not there yet.
Oh, please
get in a little bit of hockey, and you don't even have to be a fan of a team. You just got to be a fan of your country.
I like it. I like it. All right, brother. Let's turn our attention to what we came here to talk about. Let's turn our attention to the linebackers. This is a pretty good group, man. And if we pull up the stuff, we're going to see some interesting names on this board. There's a guy that I've seen on a lot of boards, top of the board. We'll bring him up very quickly. I don't think that he should be talked about. We're not really going to talk about Jalen Walker today because he's not an off-ball linebacker, in my opinion. Today we're talking about off-ball linebackers. The guys are going to play your Will, your Mike, those kinds of guys. And to me, you look at what this guy's done. He played a lot of off the ball, but when you put him on the ball, he's so much more naturally gifted there. It seemed like a completely natural fit for him. When you go back and watch the highlight tape from this year and go back and watch some of an older highlight tape, he's so much more fluid coming off the edge than he was trying to read and react and play downhill. So I don't have a write-up on him as an off-ball linebacker because I think he should be a 3-4 outside linebacker, play as an edge-type player, a la fucking TJ Watt, and that would be his best suited position.
Yeah, the rankings are still updating and changing for PFF. I don't know how much position movement they're actually going to have. But Jalen Walker out of Georgia in the past played mostly as a box linebacker, outside linebacker, but not necessarily like an off-ball edge rusher, which is why they have him ranked here as a linebacker. But if you look at this guy, he's not even 21 yet. He has good size speed, a little bit shorter for your typical like defensive end type of edge rusher. However, you're still seeing some of the modifications in the NFL, even, and it's coming from the college game where you have a different kind of feeling linebacker happening. Zach Bond is really the embodiment of what a lot of this is, where it's a guy who's more of a traditional linebacker playing an edge role, a lot more edge rushing and pass rushing. Abdul Carter was a stand-up linebacker for Penn State. Yeah. And this last year, his first year, he went as a edge rusher. And now he's being looked at pretty much across the board as the best edge rusher in the class, possibly the number 1 overall pick in this class. That's why he doesn't show up in the linebacker group. Jalen Walker is in the movement towards that, where he still played a lot of box linebacker, a lot of stand-up linebacker this year, but he also almost nearly split his time as an edge rusher. That's what the NFL, I believe, views him as. But the fact that he has that hybrid capability, he still fits in the linebacker group a little bit as far as PFF kind of rates him. However, he's an edge rush for me. If you look here, PFF ranked number 32. And look, PFF isn't the gold standard for everything here. We know that they have their issues and whatnot. However, they are a good litmus point, a good baseline for a lot of people when they're doing mock drafts and looking at the draft prospects. They have him listed as the 32nd ranked player, but that's as a linebacker, with a bunch of guys, still ahead of him. If you were to look at him as purely just an edge rusher, that's when he's getting up into that, top 5 guys conversation, except for they're all considered first rounders. Jalen Walker right now in PFF mock drafts, you can get around pick like 45, 50 if you're just using the PFF simulator without too much user input, because they have him rated lower as just a traditional linebacker. Traditional linebackers, they grade lower because they are viewed as less of a necessity on an NFL team compared to an edge rusher who's a dominant type of player. Jalen Walker in drafts right now by professionals, a lot of times he's absolutely going in the first round. A lot of them are having him top 15. We're talking, I think one of the most recent ones that I saw, he went like pick 8 to Carolina because he has that positional versatility, scheme versatility. That is a nice thing for them. So Jalen Walker, while we did just spend, at least I spent a decent amount of time here, just want to make sure everyone knows he is good. We will get into why
we will talk about him when we talk edge.
But just understand that when we go through here, we're not skipping over him. We are just repositioning him for another day.
Correct.
All righty. So these guys that we're going to go over here, not necessarily going to be like in order of who we think the best one is. A lot of them are different for different types of reasons. Um, but all of these guys, I think we each have about 5 guys that we're going to go over here. Each of them are important for different reasons, and we'll kind of detail into why we like each of them.
Hell yeah.
All right. So who do you want to go over here first, Mike?
Man, we can start right there at the top with Jihad Campbell.
All right.
So we were just kind of talking about Jalen Walker a little bit. How he was an off-ball guy, kind of stand up. I think Jihad Campbell is more of that dude that can do a little bit of everything. Where I think Jalen Walker is the dude where he should just play as an edge. This dude has lined up all over the field. Like, I'm not saying that he's a better player. He's not a better player than Jalen Walker. He's just more well-rounded. He is that kind of more jack of all trades. He's got good size, plays with decent speed. His instincts are not bad. Solid football player. Doesn't necessarily jump off the tape, though. When I was watching, and I don't have tape. I have highlights. I'm going through and I'm trying to find as many highlights as I can and see what this guy does and see how he reacts. Man, he doesn't necessarily even pop off his own highlights at certain points until like way at the end. It's even hard to track him. But he always kind of ends up around the play. He's just not a wow guy. I think he's going to be a good, serviceable player. The only thing that I think is really good about his tape, about the things that I've seen, excellence at being able to read when the balls come out of the quarterback's hands. Excellent about breaking on the ball in coverage and knows when to leap to try to get a hand on it.
All right. So Jihad for me is probably, if I were to have to rank these guys, he's probably like my number 1 linebacker out of the group. But there is a lot of what you brought into when we talked about Jalen Walker having edge rush capability. Jihad Campbell has a lot of edge rush capability and flexibility as well. He is close. Like, I would not ever categorize him as a pure edge rusher like I would with Jalen Walker, but he's closer than a lot of these other guys to being that. And I think that if you're a team that does need linebacker help, needs edge rush help, it's an option to go after him. But you don't want to have him just primarily as an edge rusher overall. So the notes that I got here, and this is one of the good things with him, he's 20 years old right now. There's a lot of room to grow, and his baseline already is pretty damn good. Campbell's intriguing prospect has positional versatility based on his scheme, profiles as an outside linebacker in a 4-3 base, but his best spot is probably as a stand-up 3-4 edge linebacker whose job isn't just to be a designated pass rusher. It isn't to say that his pass rush ability isn't good, because he is a plus player when given that job. Jihad Campbell has the acceleration explosion, which allows him to close quickly as a run defender and a pass rusher. He is good at making O-linemen miss on their blocks in both the run and the pass, shows good bend and use of arm length when sent on a blitz off the edge. This kind of parlays into some of those pass rush capabilities. Is solid in his back pedal and reading the quarterback's eyes when he's in pass coverage, and has that explosion in athleticism to close in. When he is blocked, he will get swallowed up and doesn't anchor fantastic. Has some difficulty shedding those blocks. Is susceptible to cutbacks from a rusher as well. Doesn't pop as much as you'd like when he's tackling. Someone his size, you'd want to see a little bit more bring the hammer, and you don't get that as much as you want. But he's still, by all means, a solid tackler. Biggest benefit outside of scheme versatility is his age, which creates a belief that he still has tons of room to grow as a player and can be molded into almost any defense out there. So that's what I like with him. He is good. Like, he's very good right now at rushing the passer as a run defender, and he's got some plus capability as a coverage linebacker, but he's still raw enough where that there's plenty of room to grow. Pro comps that I got for him, and for all these guys, I provide a couple pro comps of what he could be, top end or bottom end, kind of like, not necessarily like, none of these guys are terrible that I'm going to bring up, but they're options of where his career or his play style could kind of go based on where he's drafted. and that's Dre Greenlaw, Zach Bond, or Tremaine Edmonds. He could kind of mold into any three of those guys based off the type of scheme that he ends up going into first. He's a guy that I see pretty often going second half of the first round because there's a lot of pass rush needy teams. So teams that also need a linebacker and some pass rush help, he's going to help out with either that or early into the second round.
Okay. So I have a comp as well. My comp is from a guy that's a little bit older, still kind of kicking around the league though. Kyle Van Noy. Obviously, Kyle Van Noy capable come off the edge, but was not always that guy. Kind of was a tweener a little bit when he came out, and then played a little off ball. I think definitely played off ball in New England, but was better on the ball. So a guy that's moved around a lot, and I kind of feel like that's a pretty good space to be. Kyle Van Noy's had a long ass career, pretty decent career as well. So I mean, yeah, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, solid player for sure. All right, who's next on your list of people to go over?
Okay, well, I mean, I have Demetrius Knight on here as well, so we can talk about this dude.
Sure,
man. He runs really well and diagnoses fast. When he makes his read, it triggers. It is really, really good. Does at times kind of over pursue. Pretty good when he scrapes to avoid traffic, but has a tendency to overrun just a little bit. He hits the shit out of people though, man. And he's a big dude. It kind of reminds me of like that Joke, but not the same build. So he doesn't necessarily hit the same kind of violence. Like Joke is a more lean guy, triggers very fast, and pops you with his speed, and he's a little lighter. This guy gets downhill quick, but he's bigger bodied. He'll come up and he will smack you. I don't know. I think anybody that drafts this guy he's gonna have a chance to start. I don't know if he's gonna be 3 downs right away. I think you want to see a little bit of uptick in his coverage ability. But I love him being on the field when there's run situations and him flying downhill and smacking a running back.
Yeah, that's Demetrius Knight. I think you are getting what you see pretty quickly. He is what would he be considered that prototypical kind of boxer middle linebacker a decade ago. Good size, good strength, field general mentality, fantastic instincts against the run. Great at taking on and shedding blocks. Yeah, it's like speedy with that run diagnosis. He's a consistent, dependable tackler. Really good acceleration for his size, but he does get stiff in his hips and isn't super twitchy. He doesn't take bad angles on people, but because doesn't have that twitch, he's not going to be able to stretch sideline to sideline as much as you would want to see from more of the modern NFL linebacker. And that translates into some of his issues, which tends to be in coverage. You absolutely don't want him in man. You don't want him covering a tight end, a man-to-man, or a running back out of the backfield. And he's not much better in zone. He's okay, but not super great. He's subpar at diagnosing. He'll allow guys to come in and out of his zone without really recognizing that they're there at first, and then he's already a step behind because of it. And then the biggest problem with him, he's 25 years old. Yeah. He is a old linebacker, all right? And so the most reports are that because of that age, because he has played so much, and he's done a good job for playing so long, they think that he's probably already pretty close to his season or ceiling. So that's Demetrius Knight is more of that second round type of player, could even technically fall in the third round, a little bit more of a second round guy because he is probably someone that you bring in, you're able to plug and play in the middle pretty damn quick. I have him as more of a tuned down linebacker because of those coverage, the lack of coverage ability, or it being more of his weakness. And he isn't necessarily like a big pass rusher. Like you're not sending him on blitzes. At least they didn't do it at South Carolina as much. So like he only played 30 pass rush snaps this last year. So they were even taking him off the field in South Carolina. You're probably not seeing him out there on designated pass rush snaps, but he's someone that right away you probably can plug in as a middle linebacker pretty early on in his career and get good production from him. It's just not going to be super high ceiling stuff.
Yeah, he's gonna fly around. He's gonna get a shitload of tackles.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's what his job is. That's kind of what his job was at South Carolina, like you alluded to as well, man.
And so pro comps for him that I have here, Paul Posluszny, Reggie Ragland, CJ Mosley. Those guys all kind of had hype coming out in the draft. They all ended up technically being a little bit more of just like those box linebackers, not fantastic in coverage. And so while the hype was there for like their ability to play against the run as linebackers, they still had weaknesses in the NFL that ended up not making them like necessarily household names long term.
All right. All
righty.
Ready for the next one, brother?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, what do we got here? Let's stop at Carson, man. So
I'm a fan.
I like this kid ish. I think he's too light to be a 3-down linebacker, man. I really do. He had a great year, tons of production at UCLA, but this was like the first year that he had ever done that. He only comes in at like 225. He's going to be able to run, but I think he's got to get bigger. I think he's going to have a hard time going up against good offensive linemen that get onto him. He's going to struggle with size. A big body running back is going to fucking run right through his chest. But this guy's really good on special teams, and he's awesome when he blitzes. If he has to sit back, diagnose, and react to the run game, I think he's going to struggle. But if you send him going forward, he knows he's blitzing or he knows he's dropping in the coverage. This kid's pretty good at those things. But he doesn't play traditional linebacker at all at the next level, in my opinion. He's an interesting prospect, but I have concerns about his ability to stack up against the run.
See, I agree with some of it. So like he's good against or as a rusher, but he just wasn't asked to do it like almost ever. When he did it, he was good at it. It's just so limited that I can't say that he's great at it yet. I just have him
saw him come off an edge. I always saw him. Everything that I saw, he was coming from the second level.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's with these linebackers. It's tough because we talk about being a rusher. Like linebackers get blitzed too, and that's more what we're talking about here. For him, I wasn't able to anywhere to find an age, so I don't know.
I couldn't find it either, dude.
I don't know what we're looking at for like, has he reached that sort of developmental ceiling? The thing is, like you brought up, he has only started 1 year this last year. And when he did start, he was fantastic this year. Athletic, instinctive. Some people think that he could be a steal because he's still a raw talent and you don't really completely know what you got, which everyone tries to look at the glass half full with these guys because of that limited playing time. 1 year starter, impressive during that, which could be a fluke or it could mean that his ceiling is a lot higher than we were expecting. Very good athlete, ability to move all over the field, both in the run and the pass game. His instincts are the key. You brought up the size. He is very instinctive. He is good at diagnosing stuff, which is why he was able to get on the field and do so well this year. Uses those instincts to overcome his weaknesses, which is his overall strength. He's going to struggles to take on blocks, struggles to disengage, not being a heavy hitter. He showed that ability as pass rusher, but it's still a bit of an unknown because of only the 1 year of use and limited use at that. Did a very good job when he was asked of it, though. His biggest benefit is those raw instincts, solid movement, athleticism, profiles him as a potential 3-down linebacker in the NFL, whose best fit is in the middle or as a weak side linebacker, preferably in a Tampa 2 style system. And he could see a solid rise, especially with the combine coming up, if his athletic traits show out well in the combine, because that's where you get to show off that athleticism, and that might make him a bit of a quick riser because of that. He's still seen as a 2nd to 3rd round pick as of right now. And that's the thing. He's around 225 pounds, but this is a little bit more of that modern NFL linebacker. Like I talked with Demetrius Knight, he's that classic old school linebacker, the bigger thumper type of guy. NFL guys are getting faster and whatnot. They're getting bigger too, but you need guys that are able to cover these running backs out of the backfield, more athletic tight ends. Schlesinger is a guy that can absolutely do that, and he still has room to bulk on that frame. He can add another 10, 15 pounds of good weight. That brings him up to that 240-ish range, and we're going to be able to see good things from him there. Pro comps for me, somewhere between a Drew Tranquil, who is almost identical in the size for the Kansas City Chiefs, out to a Jamie Sherwood. Not sure if you're as familiar with him or not. He's going to be a free agent this year for the Jets. Extremely productive. This is like Jamie Sherwood's first year really being a starter there for the Jets, and was extremely productive. Lots of tackles, great fantasy linebacker if you're able to get him. So that's kind of where I have him. Sherwood, again, a little bit almost identical kind of size, really good in coverage, instinctive, fast. Wasn't going to lay the lumber on you, but he's a solid tackler nonetheless.
Okay. So I mean, I have some concerns. I think he can be a good player if he goes to the right place. I do think he needs to put on some weight. I had 5 to 10 is what I had in my notes. He needs to put on 5 to 10 pounds. 10 to 15 of good weight sounds even better, because if he runs well, which he projects to run pretty damn well, he'll probably be mid 4.5s, maybe even maybe low 4.5s, because he looks like he runs well on tape. If he can put on that weight and stay in that range, this kid could be really good. He's just a little light, because I know we keep saying the modern linebacker, and that was the model, the modern linebacker. But we're seeing teams go more to this power running style. So if that pendulum is starting to swing back, Carson's going to have to get bigger. Because if they come at him with gap scheme and power schemes, he's going to have a hard time taking on blocks, shedding, and making plays.
And look, that's why, like I said, Drew Tranquil looks bigger, but he is that 225, 230, and only about 6'2". And Drew Tranquil is an extremely productive linebacker in that Chiefs system. And I think that's right about where Schlesinger could fit in. He's going to be extremely productive. He's not going to be like a highlight reel guy by any means, but he's an absolutely big, like a solid component of a defense, which is kind of what the interior linebackers are these days. Like, you don't have too many guys that are like, hey, that's the corner piece of my defense. It's about your defensive line, your edge rush talent, and some lockdown corners. You need decent players at those other positions, just like the Chiefs had decent players all over that defense and a really solid defensive line. That's where Schlesinger fits into me. And that's why he's sitting in that second to third round type pick area. But again, good combine, and this guy's going to be pushing up higher into that second round. I don't think he's a first round guy by any means. No, but for a above average to good role player, I think that he could absolutely develop into that in a couple years.
All right.
All righty. Who's number 4 on your list here, Mike?
Well, I was going to ask you, man, is there anybody in particular that you want to talk about? Because I feel like I've kind of dominated who we're talking about.
Well, I look, the next 2 guys on the list are the next 2 guys that make sense to me, and that's Chris Paul and Jeffrey Bassa. Both of them I like and have stuff written up about them. And then after that, I start to see a drop off of guys who are, I don't want to call them Jags, because I actually think that this linebacker class, while it is not studded at the top, even with the guys that we talked about already, it's not studded at the top, but it is a pretty solid linebacker class where you're going to find guys who, at a minimum, are going to be solid on special teams for you, but should be able to be rotational guys. And there is a good handful of them that could find themselves 3-4 years from now being average to above average NFL starters, including these 2 that I want to go over here, Chris Paul Jr. and Jeffrey Bassa.
So I don't have a lot on Jeffrey Bassa. I do know a little bit on Chris Paul. The next guy I'm going to talk about was Barrett. I didn't want to jump over these guys if you had some stuff that you wanted to go over on them. So
yeah, for sure. So Chris Paul Jr., not related to actual Chris Paul. No. Kind of smaller, undersized, but still, again, for what's more of that modern type of NFL linebacker. Think Ivan Pace ain't over 6 foot, and he does himself a pretty good job. But Chris Paul goes by Pooh. Plays bigger than his size. Has some decent thud when he tackles. Overall, good athlete who does everything average to above average as a middle linebacker. Solid in coverage against running backs and non-move tight ends. Once you start getting into that move tight end, which is basically a big wide receiver, we're still going to see some problems. Quick to diagnose play types, run versus the pass. Athleticism and decisiveness in the run game allows him to meet the running back quicker than most offensive linemen can get to him in blocking. Athleticism provides him a good sideline to sideline range as well. Because of that size, he lacks the overall play strength to hold up in a gap once the lineman reaches him. Despite that decisiveness, his instincts on the run plays need more development. I still prefer him being that decisive guy over someone who is slow to diagnose, and then by that time that he figures it out, the play's already behind him. So I'd rather him kind of be that little bit more aggro with it. Worst case, I think he's a productive special teamer or a sub package linebacker with some ability to become an above average 3-down linebacker in a 4-3 base scheme in a couple years. Pro cons for me and Eric Kendricks, Divine Diablo, or a Zaire Franklin if he kind of hits those peaks of what he can be. I like him. He's a guy that you're going to find round 4, 5 type area possibly. Maybe works himself up into the 3rd round, but I don't think so in this draft class. But overall, I generally like him.
Okay, so I was going to ask if you had some concerns about the size as well, because I have some concerns about the size, same as I brought up before with Carson. He's a good player. I think that the size concerns also make me worry. Does he run well enough that you can play him as a will? Because, I mean, you can get him as a Mike. You can play him as a Mike. I think, obviously, he can diagnose. But, once again, you worry about a little bit about the size. And I have more concerns with that because I think that the pendulum is starting to swing back the other way, where we're going to see more power. You did bring up, his size a little bit. So, some small concerns there, but you are not quite there yet on
Yeah, it's like I said, that you don't see as many of those traditional linebackers anymore. The guy that's 6'3" to 6'5", 250 pounds, like that kind of brute linebacker, because that while there is the power game that's developing, you're still seeing a lot of athleticism, a lot of crazy stuff. A Ben Johnson style offensive playbook is going to be able to bring both that power and a whole lot of stuff to stretch the field laterally. So you have to have guys that can be shifty. That you're not necessarily looking for the guy that can bring the lumber. You want someone who can go and start to initiate the tackle, so that way everyone can then get in on the tackle rather than one of these fast guys getting behind you. It's linebacker for me used to be like when I looked at them again 5-10 years ago, I wanted that bigger thumper guy. I wanted the next Brian Urlacher or something like that. Zach Thomas, those type of guys is what you're looking for. Now I've modified it to where it's like I'm not as worried about the height. 6'2", 6'1" is okay with me. 225 to 235 is okay with me as long as they aren't being fit into that role of kind of that bigger thumper linebacker. That's why I'm okay with some of these guys, especially if you're able to have plus athleticism and coverage capability, which some of these smaller guys typically tend to bring. That's something that's nice. Yeah.
All right. Oh, I got nothing else on Chris Paul Jr., brother. So let's talk about Bassa. I don't know much about this young man, so I'm gonna let you take it away.
All righty, cool. So Oregon linebacker, he actually was like a team captain there with Oregon, respected as like the leader of that defense. Productive, 262, 235, 22 years old. Very, very productive. He lacks that overall strength, but doesn't recognize that he doesn't have the strength. In the run game, he's very aggressive. Takes on blockers, probably when he shouldn't a lot of times. But still does a decent job of shedding those linemen. It feels like he decides sometimes to engage with the blocker when he doesn't necessarily need to. He could use that athleticism to get by them and make the play. He isn't great at diagnosing runs, gets out of position because of that. He is going to be most productive as a coverage style linebacker, especially in the zone. He has the requisite athleticism to be able to cover, decent press skills, and really good discipline as a pass defender. This shows up because he has experience as a defensive back. He started off as a defensive back and became more of this kind of smaller style linebacker, even though he's got bigger size than the last guy we talked about, Chris Paul. So good anticipation of the quarterback and his actions, good at reading the eyes. You see a lot of stuff where he's out there tipping passes or blocking passes, which you don't see as much from linebackers. Might be best suited into playing as a sub package linebacker on pass downs because of that, or he could be a little bit more that Joker style of linebacker who, you see it with the Vikings. Josh Metellus, he's a big safety who comes down and plays linebacker, plays all across the field. Boston might be able to have a little bit of that. Again, not fantastic in the run, but pretty damn good in pass coverage. So hasn't shown a big proclivity as a blitzer either, or a pass rusher in general. So he profiles kind of as that weak side linebacker, 4-3 base schemes, and a sub package linebacker for pass downs. Pro comps for me, I got Trevin Wallace and D Winters. Winters being, I believe, from the Panthers, Wallace from 49ers, I believe. Both a little bit more coverage guys. They're not out there, not 3-down backers, but good in coverage.
All right. I'm gonna have to take a look at this kid a little bit more. I had a couple other guys that I wanted to look at. One in particular that I like. One guy that I'm going to kind of comp him to, and he's right there. So Barrett Carter is an interesting prospect. The production has kind of gone down. The grades have gone down every single year, but he's a pretty well-known name. He's got good size, decent speed. This is another guy that doesn't really pop off the tape, though. Not old. The one thing he does kind of do well is blitz from the second level. But he's way behind Schlesinger in that regard, coming from that level. He will be probably a decent prospect. He will make a roster. He'll see some snaps. He'll play some special teams. But there's a guy that I think profiles very similar to him that is not getting talked about a lot. I think luckily just got his invite to the combine. And that's Cody Lindenberg out of Minnesota. That kid I like a lot. I think he profiles very similar to Barrett. But I like Cody better. The lack of the production drop every year, the grade drop every year, it's kind of alarming. We've seen guys that come in are incredibly dominant early on in their college careers and then kind of fall off. Is that a work ethic thing? Did people figure them out? You never really know. But that worries me. What do you got on? Do you have anything on Barrett Carter?
Yeah, so like you're bringing up those production grades, the overall grade is kind of dropping year in year out. The thing with him is that his athleticism, I think, is what carried him by, and you would hope that the instincts and an ability to diagnose would move along with that athleticism and grow as he's in college. And it seems like it's just kind of stagnated. If anything, in some ways, it's gotten worse. He's not good at taking on the blocks. His athleticism allows him to be the right place in coverage, but still he's not a good coverage linebacker. He's not good at diagnosing the run and whatnot. But that athleticism there is still going to kind of pique the interest of a lot of people. He's again one of those smaller kind of linebackers this year. He's 6'1", 230, so a little bit shorter. If they're able to, I think that this guy is going to be a late round pick. He's going to be 5th round, possibly later. Because of those athletic traits, those will lend himself well towards special teams. And then if an NFL coach is able to kind of unlock some of that, between the ears diagnosis, then maybe starts to see a little bit more on the field as like a rotational backer or a backup.
All right. Anybody else in here you want to talk about before I kind of talk about Cody Lindenberg?
No, I think, we talked about it before the show. 2 guys that we have as later round guys, or at least 2 guys for me that I have as later round guys that I like the upward potential, Cody Simon and Cody Lindenberg here. And also I'm a fan of Jay Higgins as kind of more of a late round steal. I like him better than PFF has him rated.
Okay. All right.
So let's get into Lindenberg, a little gopher guy.
Little Cody Lindenberg, Minnesota guy, Big Ten guy. So I actually have watched this gentleman play football a couple of times. So he's big, he's athletic-ish. How he runs at the combine, because I believe he did get that invite, is going to be huge for his draft stock. I've got a huge swing on this kid. He can go somewhere as high as the 4th round, or he could go all the way undrafted. He's got some injury history, so that is a concern. But if he goes out there and puts on a good run, I think that he could go pretty high. If he touches 4.5, he's going to get drafted in the 4th round. I don't know that he'll run that well. If he's in the 4.6s, he should get drafted. If he drops all the way down to the 4.7s, which if the injuries have kind of battered his body, I worry that he could drop all the way down to undrafted. But if he falls there, I think he should be a priority UDFA. He's going to immediately contribute on special teams with a massive ability to grow into a bigger role. Takes on blocks well, covers well. He is fucking everywhere. You talk about good instincts from some of these other guys. This kid's instincts are one of the things that keeps him on the field because he's not as athletic as some of these other dudes. He has some of the best instincts in this draft. So if he finds a way to run well, this kid is going to get drafted all the way up as high as the 4th round, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Lindenberg to me is again a little bit more leaning towards that classic linebacker, that middle backer. He's got the requisite size that you're looking for. He brings the pop. Part of that, you said you see him everywhere. He's extreme high motor. Like he's all out 100% every play. You don't see him take plays off. Really good against the run, though he can over pursue, get himself out of position and whatnot. Coverage, he looks comfortable, but he's not necessarily anything special in coverage. Again, he's that box middle linebacker, which if you're looking at that classic box middle linebacker, you're not expecting a guy to be fantastic in coverage. He's there usually as more of your 2-down guy against runs and whatnot. He's good at filling up a gap. He isn't great at shedding blocks. He's got good long arms where he should be able to stack, shed that block. He doesn't do it as well as he should. A little bit older prospect. They don't have it on here. I believe he's a 5-year player in college, so he's a little bit older prospect. A guy that I like. That I think I see him, as a good value guy in that day 3 of the draft. I don't know that he'll necessarily go undrafted, but he doesn't have anything like special about him. He can absolutely be a role player, and then if he exceeds kind of those expectations, you could see him as kind of that rundown type of linebacker making some of these squads.
All right. That's what I got on Cody. I don't have anything else on any of the prospects. So, do you got anybody else, brother? Before we start talking about some of the upcoming free agent linebackers.
No, we don't got to get too deep into it. Another names that you'll find around that same spot, or even later, like I said, Cody Simon out of Ohio State. I'm a fan of his as well. In that same round range as Cody Lindenberg. I mean, if you look 166 versus 168, PFF has them both kind of like the same caliber or tier player. Danny Stutzman is a name that is going to be fun to watch because of his size. His production. I have
seen him mocked like as high, like fairly high in some, and then low as shit in others.
Yeah, as you can see, terrible coverage grades. All right, fantastic against the run, very productive, and he has the size of that box middle linebacker. Also, he's got the moxie of it. He's got a lot of stuff out there on Google of him wearing cowboy hats and everything. A little bit of a ladies' man. So he's a guy, because he is very limited in the pass game, he is probably going to be drafted, but it's going to be towards the end of the draft because he's limited in what he can do more than a Cody Lindenberg or anything like that. And then Jay Higgins, I'm a fan of Jay Higgins as well. I think that he's going to be a little more of a late draft steal because he does kind of everything pretty solid. Good pass rush, as you can see here, good against the run, really good in coverage. He's kind of that more flexible. I think he's going to find his way in as a backup linebacker who is going to kind of be that, average to below average starter if you have to start him, at least initially, but he could definitely grow into that role. A guy who I think is a little bit more of a late round steal if the NFL isn't on him as much.
All right. Listen, every team needs special teamers, late round linebackers. You're going to end up tackling a lot of dudes.
Absolutely.
So just get used to that. Get used to playing special teams, or get used to the idea of playing special teams. But we're going to kind of change. We're going to stay with linebackers, but we're going to change over from prospects to guys that are already in the league, could be looking for new homes. Now, I'm not sure that all of these are official just yet, but this is what they have, kind of a free agency primer. This is also from PFF. Some of these guys, some of these names, big names. First one right off the rip, Dre Greenlaw, excellent linebacker, 49ers, coming off of a season-ending injury, though.
Well, so he was injured almost the entire year. He came back at the end of the
At the
year.
very end.
Yeah, and if you kind of remember it was Devondre Campbell was the linebacker that the 49ers had playing there in his position most of the year.
Mhm.
When Greenlaw came back and was getting worked into the rotation, Devondre Campbell basically walked off the field, was pissed that he was having to share time.
Not remember.
That it was a big deal towards the end of the year where you had Shanahan coming out being like, look, if guys aren't going to be here, they're not going to be here. Like if you're not going to play for your team, you're not going to be here. Devondre Campbell has been released already, I believe, after the end of the season because he was being a little bit of a sourpuss. He probably picked that up when he was playing in Green Bay. I get it. Makes people shitty. But Dre Greenlaw spent most of that year on IR because of injury.
So I thought he had got hurt at the.
He might have gotten back at the end, but he was out with an Achilles for like almost the entire year.
Yeah, so he did not play much at all then. I apologize on not knowing the time frame there. But when he was on the field, last time that we saw him consistently on the field, excellent linebacker. I mean, the linebacker core from the 49ers has been touted for years. Do they consider bringing him back? Does he go search for a contract elsewhere now that apparently he is healthy? And if so, where does he fit? Because there's some guys that are going to be looking for new homes. Bobby Wagner leaving the Commanders. Commanders could be looking to replace a Bobby Wagner. Do they go with a younger option and a Dre Greenlaw? What do you think, Evo?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not positive Bobby Wagner is going to leave. He's obviously about to be 35 years old. That's really old for a linebacker, but he still has been very productive. Wagner has been, and he's a relatively cheap option, a team leader, someone that Washington might want to continue to kind of build their team around and slowly move him out of, a full-time starter role. Greenlaw, though, like if he does come back from that Achilles injury back to full form, like he can be a top 15, 20 linebacker in the league. Again, one of those guys that I comped Jihad Campbell to. He's good off the edge. He's a good linebacker. A big time loss for that 49ers team when he went down last year in the Super Bowl with the Achilles. So I think people are going to be clamoring for Greenlaw if the medicals check out well. If I'm Greenlaw's team, I'm putting all my medical stuff out now if things are good. So that way teams can kind of start to get the warm and fuzzy before we even hit free agency season. But if you don't see a big contract for him, if it's a 1-year deal, PFF I know projects 1 year, $6 million, and I believe that's based on teams being unsure about the medical. He only played 34 snaps this last year, like the one game basically that he was out there, and it caused issues with Devondre Campbell. So if San Francisco was willing to play him, that would lead me to believe that the medicals are going to check out okay, which means I think he's going to find himself a good home next year. He could play anywhere that needs a linebacker, and you might be getting him on a discount because of that injury history.
And we're probably not looking at a reunion there with the 49ers, considering their cap situation. They've obviously told Debo he can go out and search for a trade. So they were in a tough cap spot. I don't know if anything changes with the news that cap goes up by $22 million. Maybe that can help keep a Dre Greenlaw there. But that was tough for them to re-sign him because he knows what they know about. Like everybody knows everybody. The worth should be higher to them, so he would probably expect a higher contract from them.
Yeah, the 49ers as of today with the updated expected numbers have around 50.6 million of cap space. So they have a decent amount. The problem is you got guys you got to pay. They got to work something out with Kittle. Juszczyk is expected to be a free agent. And of course, Brock Purdy. That contract is looming. You're probably paying upwards of 50 million a year for him. You've got the IU contract, which, now in retrospect, looks really bad for him. And yeah, they're having to shed off some contracts like a Debo if they want to maintain a decent cap standing going into the future. I mean, you've got a lot of big contracts on that team that they're going to have to figure out how to deal with. biggest being Brock Purdy. So Greenlaw might be lost in the mix a little bit there. However, Robert Saleh going back there as defensive coordinator, I'm pretty sure Greenlaw was there when Saleh was there as the defensive coordinator before. If Saleh wants his guy, they could probably try to find a way to work that in, keep him there.
Yeah. All right, man. So let's talk about another name. You kind of brought it up that he could go back. Bobby Wagner, big time name. Bobby Wagner is still one of the best in football, in my opinion. The fact that he was very unceremoniously released in Seattle, the way that all of that worked out was kind of shitty. He is still a good linebacker, can lead a defense. I mean, he is a absolute leader of men. That is a captain on any and every fucking football team that you've ever thought about being on. Do the Commanders bring him back as a way to kind of help continue to build that defense? Because they're going to have to continue to address that defense. They have a lot of nice pieces on offense. They're going to want to address the offensive line a little bit. But the primary focus of that team needs to be getting a defense that can get them off the field and the ball back into Jaden Daniels' hands faster.
Yeah, look, we're going to look at each of these teams once free agency is kind of complete before the draft. We're going to take the time to go through each of the divisions in the NFL, talk about the team needs and stuff, especially after they've gone through and made that first round of free agent signings. I absolutely think that Bobby Wagner could go back. You brought up kind of like they need some offensive line help. Sam Cosmi going down for them is going to be a big loss, especially at the end of the year. They need to make sure that they have a good offensive line situation for Jaden Daniels going forward. They also need to add probably some weapons for him because outside of Scary Terry, like the guys that they have there are questionable at running back and wide receiver. Like none of them are necessarily top end talents. Zach Ertz isn't going to play at tight end forever. But the defense is kind of their biggest, weakest focal point right now. You have a defensive head coach. They're probably going to want to focus there. If Bobby Wagner wants to continue playing football, I don't know why you wouldn't bring him back because you're probably getting him back at a discount. Like he knows where he's at in his career. He's gotten these contracts the past several years. He's going to be a $7 million or less per year type of linebacker, and you're probably not having to give him more than 1 year on that contract because he's 35 years old. He knows he's going to retire soon. You know he's going to retire soon. There's no need in messing around with that. He has been uber productive, ageless kind of guy here. Posted his tied for the best career pass rushing year as a linebacker for him with a 91 PFF grade. He is still just absolutely putting up like top 15, top 20 type linebacker numbers.
I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He walks into the Hall of Fame as soon as he's eligible, in my opinion.
I don't know if as soon as he's eligible, but definitely he's up there. He's one of those
ballot linebacker. He has been one of the best. There was a 5-year period where he was the best linebacker in all of football.
Yeah, I do not mean to denigrate him at all. It's just I think linebackers again kind of get looked down on compared to skill
just
positions.
Because the value.
That's why I don't know if you'll see first ballot, but the way that the type of player he's been fantastic. And kind of like he brought up, leader of men, he's that kind of core heart of a defense, and I think he can still be that there with a relatively young Commanders defense that needs to get younger, stay younger, with a whole bunch of injection of youth. They got a ton of cap space to play with as well. They had the most cap space right now of any team in the NFC, with $82.2 million after today expected to have in cap space. So bringing back a guy like a Bobby Wagner, it's not going to prevent you from playing a guy if he starts to outplay him, a young guy. But you're looking at what PFF expects an average of $5 million per year for 1 year. So a $5 million contract to bring him in, you're probably getting a starter out of him at least for this year. And he's going to be able to mentor the rest of your guys. He's someone that I absolutely bring back if I'm the Commanders.
And if you don't have the ability to compete for a title at this point, I'm not sure that Bobby's interested in going to you either. He's not playing for money at this point. Bobby's made his money.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
All right, man. So another big name, 1 year wonder, Zach Vaughn. I mean, we talked about some comps to him in our prospects. He could be in line for a huge deal, but there could be some teams that are very leery about bringing in a 1 year production guy. Contract year, obviously played around a ton of other talent. Do the Eagles bring him back? Because if they do, it's probably going to cost them a pretty penny.
I think that they are going. I think they'll find a way to bring him back because at the end of the day, he isn't an edge rusher. He's a linebacker who has good pass rushing capability, and he really got to show that off this year. But I think that he's going to get himself a decent little contract to stay there. But the Eagles are going to shed some guys who are part of that linebacker rotation who aren't as productive as a Zach Bond. Look, he's gotten better every single year. He's seen the field more and more every single year. And then that comes down to this year where he plays over 1,200 snaps. He's basically the number one rated linebacker according to PFF. Tons of sacks, and he's fitting into, if you want to call it that, the modern linebacker role in the NFL where they have some pass rush capability. This is more of like what that Jalen Walker type of mold is going to be. He's 6'3", 225 pounds. And this is kind of what NFL teams are going to be looking for. You don't need as big of a linebacker if you've got a super solid defensive line. What do the Eagles have? Fucking dudes in the trenches. So this guy's able to be a little bit more free, get around. Those linemen are holding up the offensive line, and it allows a guy like a Zach Bond, who's more athletic, to be able to get around there, get to the quarterback, get in the backfield, have an extremely productive season. I think that the Eagles are probably going to end up doing what they need to bring him back. He's probably like their biggest priority free agent, next to like a Milton Williams on defensive line and whatnot.
All right. So do you see a big name changing teams at the linebacker spot this offseason?
Not necessarily. Depending on what the Chiefs end up wanting to do, Nick Bolton is a starter for them. He's listed as like the second best linebacker available right now on PFF. He's a role player, but he's not like a standout role player. It depends on what sort of contract he ends up wanting. I think that he might price himself out of what the Chiefs can give him, and then he ends up not being as not I don't want to say not as good wherever he goes, but I think he's going to get paid more than he's probably worth compared to some of these other guys around here. See guys like Ernest Jones, he's already been passed around multiple times in the past couple of years via trade. Very productive, but like there's a reason why teams are willing to kind of trade him. And then a guy that I brought up, Jamie Sherwood, like he's a 1-year wonder. Really good coverage backer, really highly productive. But his biggest year and only year was this year, where he played just over 1,000 snaps, had himself a really, really good year. He's going to be cheaper, but you're looking at a guy with high upside if he continues on this trend like he did this year. So that's a guy that I think is going to be a little bit more of a budget guy. You're probably looking at less than 10 mil a year to bring Jamie Sherwood in. As long as he's able to be productive like that and a good coverage linebacker, he's going to be fun to watch. But there's no really like big names. I mean, if you go back here further down the list, Levante David, he's a 35-year-old linebacker where his production has continued to drop. He's not the Levante David he was 4 years ago. Robert Spillane, a fun guy. He's a little bit older than you necessarily want at 29 years old, but he had himself a pretty damn good year with the Raiders. Very productive, another productive fantasy linebacker for you. So a name that you might recognize there. But again, he is kind of a little bit more of that box linebacker. Like if you're looking for one of those guys, he's a cool dude to have. There's no real huge names other than guys who are kind of aged out of the position a little bit. No one that's like that top end talent outside of Zach Bond, who again, I think the Eagles are probably going to make a strong play to re-sign. And then Dre Greenlaw is the next guy that we already talked about. And it's just based off of injury. If it wasn't for the injury, like he'd be looking at, being there pretty damn close neck and neck with Zach Bond, except for Greenlaw has a longer historical record of being really good.
Really, really good. So free agent class, kind of bad. Not a bad draft class, though. Pretty solid group of dudes that I think can be productive at the NFL level. I mean, we talked at least, 5 guys that were guys that are productive that could be starters day 1, day 2 picks. A couple of day 3 pick guys we even mentioned in there that could be productive, helpful on a team, especially on the special teams aspect. I don't think I got any other linebackers to talk about, brother.
No, look, like linebackers, I hate to say they're kind of getting the running back treatment, like where we're overlooking them to an extent. Obviously, they're a pivotal part of the defense. A lot of them are that field general, the one calling in the plays. And there is a heap of linebackers that are going to be available this year. That might drive down some of the contracts, except for some of those top end guys. And it also depends on, do you consider an outside linebacker to be an outside linebacker in your system, or are they an edge rusher in other systems? Like a Khalil Mack is listed in some places as a free agent linebacker because he's up as a free agent this year. Hassan Reddick, we know what happened with the Jets. He's going to be hitting the market. That's going to that whole situation is probably going to hurt him quite a bit financially. But again, he's a little bit more that edge rusher, outside linebacker. You've got guys like Matthew Judon, old, kind of was unproductive in Atlanta this year. Preston Smith, Levante David, Dre Greenline that we brought up, Jerome Baker, Bobby Wagner, Isaiah Simmons, that kind of hybrid joker. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? Does he come off the edge guy? Kaiser White, also coming from the Cardinals, small but productive. Anthony Nelson, Devondre Campbell, brought him up. Crybaby bitch. Sorry, he was a gopher, and then the fucking Packers ruined him. Tyrell Dodson, EJ Speed, Robert Spillane, Landon Roberts, Zach Vaughn, Kalavion Chason, a bunch of names that you probably recognize. Shaq Thompson, Josh Uche, guys that are going to be starters still, or be able to be out there and be starters, but their contracts are going to kind of be lower than you'd want. Yeah. So if you need linebacker help, it's not necessarily like a terrible year. You're just not going to be going out and getting to like some of the top end talent that's out there. You're going to get reliable to decent starters.
Yeah.
See if you need them.
Or you could always attack the draft and add some of the productive talent that's in there as well, man. But
yeah, absolutely.
Brother, I have nothing else. I have nothing else to talk about for today. Do you have anything else you'd like to bring up before we tell the people thank you for tuning in and we get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, look, the big thing is we already started our breakdown here of linebackers because we got some important dates coming up. The offseason, while we haven't hit the new league year yet, the offseason is upon us, all right? So I want to make sure that we go over, mark these down in your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. We got important dates coming up because if you thought that you were going to get time to kind of take a breath, that was this week. This was your week off from football. You're back into it next week, all right? And that's why we're going over the linebackers already here, all right? The franchise tag window has opened, all right? Teams can start franchise tagging players as of today, I believe. Yesterday, 18th. All right. Those franchise tags or transition tags have to be finished up by the 4th of March, which we are almost into March here. But the big deal coming right around the corner, February 24th through March 3rd, NFL Scouting Combine. That's when those rookies are going to be out there. That's why we need to start going through these rookie rankings with you. So that way you guys, if you want to pay attention to that Scouting Combine, see who the high rises are and whatnot, you kind of already start to know these names. After that, all right, negotiation periods start March 10th through 12th. That is the legal tampering period. Just so you understand, the illegal tampering period starts next week, the 24th at the Scouting Combine. That's when everyone is going to be out there rubbing dicks, finding out who wants what for contracts, how we can trade players. Don't expect a whole lot of franchise tagging to happen between now and then, because that's when teams are going to start to talk to the players' agents and be like, what do you really want? How can we schmooze this? Things like that. And then if they think they can't get a deal done, you'll start to see some of the franchise tags get executed, right? That's a big point for us, is that Scouting Combine, because that, again, is where head coaches, GMs, and agents are all under the same roof, and they are going to be talking. That's when your illegal tampering period really starts. The legal tampering period, though, March 10th. We are less than a month away from the legal tampering period for the NFL season starts, and then free agency, 12th of March at 4 p.m. Eastern time. That is when the new league year starts. That is when we'll start seeing guys signed. That's why you see guys get signed to these major contracts a minute after noon or after 4 p.m. because those contracts were already basically worked out in that
illegal. All that dick touching they were doing in Indy.
Yeah, that illegal and legal tampering period. That's when you're going to start seeing some crazy shit happening. That is big for us. Obviously, we're going to be here with you the whole way, going through what happens with the Scouting Combine and free agency when it starts in less than a month, people. In less than a month, we have free agency, all right? Then you have your annual league meetings, which take place between the 30th of March and April 2nd. And we're going to be starting to look at the NFL draft. NFL draft, 24th of April through the 26th of April. Not that far away. We are almost done with February, and then we're looking at just being under 2 months away for that NFL draft. being in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Pretty fucking shitty. I know. That's a bummer for everybody. But April 24th, when all these rookies that we're talking about are going to be going to new homes. So the league year is upon us. Like, this is, again, that Madden make my team better time if you are a depraved fan like me. So get ready. We got tons more coming to you, tons of content here in the Lineman Lounge. We have interesting stuff for the future, a lot of stuff to go over.
So we were talking about it, man. The draft is coming up very fast. A lot of things coming.
A lot of changes.
A lot of change to come. But man, it is it's gonna be a hell of a ride. We're gonna take you all the way up to the draft. And it's gonna be a fucking great time. I'm looking forward to it, man. I love the offseason. I am one of those degenerates as well. I don't necessarily like playing Madden, but I like trying to pretend play GM. It makes me feel good when I get it right. And for the most part, when I get it wrong, everybody kind of expected that anyways. So it's awesome. I love this time of year. My man, thank you very much. We had a great time talking about linebackers tonight. But Evo, let's give the people one last word before we get the fuck out of
here. Oh boy. I don't know. What's a good one last word in the off season?
Illegal tampering.
Illegal tampering?
Yeah. Illegal tampering. It's already happening. Don't worry.
Look, if you're going to be doing some dick touching, make sure you do it raw. That's the best way to do it.
Absolutely. Do it raw. It's the only way we'll be doing it. Guys, this is the Lineman Lounge. I am Mike. That is Evo. If you guys tuned in tonight or at any other point, thank you very much. Time is the most valuable thing that you have. So anytime that you give some of it to us, we are forever grateful. We will be back next week, Wednesday. We're going to break down some more prospects, look at some more potential free agents. But thank you very much. I'm Mike. That's Evo. This is the Lineman Lounge. See ya.